Welcome back. Now, I hope making that vulture went super well, super successful, and I hope you had fun making those number eights. And if you remember yesterday when we were doing the V sound box, we had vacuum and Valentine and vest and van, and there was a little piece of cloth in there, and we talked about velvet. Well, there are different kinds of velvet, and if you use a special kind of velvet to make a little stuffed rabbit, it would be called velveteen. Can you say that with me? Velveteen. Velveteen. Well, I'm glad that you were able to say that with me because we have a story called The Velveteen Rabbit. And there is our beautiful letter V. Very fancy, isn't it? So fancy written. The Velveteen Rabbit. And right here it says Marjorie Williams. Who is Marjorie Williams? That's right. Good job, the author. And we know that author writes the story. Author writes the story. Author writes the story. That's why she came first. Now I'm going to open up the Velveteen Rabbit to this special page called the title page. Good job. And here it says Elizabeth Miles. Who is Elizabeth Miles? You're right again, the illustrator. And we know that illustrators illustrate, illustrators illustrate, illustrators illustrate, which means she made the pictures for the Velveteen Rabbit. There once was a Velveteen Rabbit, and in the beginning he was splendid. He was fat and bunchy, he had real thread whiskers, and his ears were lined with pink sateen. On Christmas morning, when he sat wedged in top of the boy's stocking with a sprig of holly between his paws, the effect was charming. Oh, what a pretty little rabbit! For a long time he lived in the toy cupboard in the nursery. Being only made of velveteen, some of the expensive mechanical toys quite snubbed him and pretended they were real. What? What is real? Asked the rabbit one day. Does it mean having things that buzz inside of you and stick out handles? See all the different toys? Can you see the rabbit in there? I see him. There he is. I wonder how far that plane would fly. The only toy who was kind to the rabbit was the skin horse. The skin horse had lived in the nursery longer than any of the others, and he was very wise. Real isn't how you're made, said the skin horse. It's a thing that happens when a child loves you. It takes a long time. Generally, by the time you are real, most of your hair is loved off and you get loose in the joints and very shabby. Oh, does it hurt? Asked the rabbit. Sometimes, said the skin horse, but when you are real, you don't mind being hurt. The rabbit sighed. He longed to become real, and yet the idea of growing shabby was rather sad. He wished that he could become real without uncomfortable things happening to him. See how they're having a conversation? One evening, when the boy was going to bed, he couldn't find the china dog that had always slept with him. Nana, who ruled the nursery, was in a hurry, and it was too much trouble to hunt for china dogs at bedtime, so she simply looked around about her and made a swoop. Here, she said, take your old bunny. He'll do to sleep with you. My goodness. So just like that, he gets to sleep with the boy. That night, and for many nights after, the Velveteen Rabbit slept in the boy's bed. At first he found it rather uncomfortable, for the boy hugged him tight and rolled over on him and sometimes pushed him so far under the pillow that the rabbit could scarcely breathe. But very soon he grew to like it, for the boy used to talk to him and make nice tunnels for him under the bedclothes that said we were like burrows in the real rabbits lived in. So here are the real rabbits living out in their burrows, and here the boy has made the Velveteen rabbit a little burrow. When the boy dropped off to sleep, the rabbit would snuggle down close under his little warm chin and dream with the boy's hands clasped close around him all night long. And so time went on, and the little rabbit was very happy, so happy that he never noticed how his beautiful velveteen fur was getting shabbier and shabbier, and his tail was coming unsewn, and all the pink rubbed off his nose where the boy had kissed him. So you see him up here? He doesn't look quite like he did in the first part of the story, but look how happy they are sleeping there together. Near the house where they lived, there was a wood, and in the warm summer evenings the boy liked to go there after tea to play. He took the Velveteen rabbit with him, and before he wandered off to pick flowers or play at pirates among the trees, he always made the rabbit a little nest where he could be quite cozy. Here he is in his nest. I'm gonna go play pirate, but I'll make sure you're okay and I'll come back for you. One evening, while Rabbit was lying there alone, he saw two strange beings creep out of the tall bracken near him. They were rabbits like himself, but quite furry and brand new. They must have been very well made, for their seams didn't show at all. The rabbit stared hard to see which side the clockwork stuck out, for he knew that people who jump generally have something to wind them up. But he couldn't see it. Why don't you get up and play with us? One of them asked. I don't feel like it, said Rabbit, for he didn't want to explain that he had no clockwork. Ha! Said the furry rabbit. I don't believe you can. Oh, I can, said the little rabbit. I just don't want to. So are the real rabbits talking with our Velveteen rabbit. But the wild rabbits have very sharp eyes, and this one stretched out his neck to look. He hasn't got any hind legs. Fancy a rabbit without any hind legs. And he began to laugh. Oh, and he doesn't even smell right. He isn't a rabbit at all. He isn't real. And the little rabbit nearly began to cry. But just then the boy ran past them, and with a stamp of feet and a flash of white tails, the two strange rabbits disappeared. Come back! Come back and play with me! Called the little rabbit. Oh, do come back! But there was no answer. The Velveteen rabbit was alone, and for a long time he lay very still, hoping that they would come back. But they never returned, and presently the boy came and carried him home. See how fast they went hopping away? Thank goodness, they flashed and were gone. Weeks passed, and the little rabbit grew very old and shabby. He even began to lose his shape. He scarcely looked like a rabbit anymore, except to Boy. To him, he was always beautiful, and that was all the little rabbit cared about. And then, one day, the boy was ill. His face grew very flushed, and he talked in his sleep, and his little body was so hot that it burned the rabbit when he held him close. Strange people went in the nursery, and a light burned all night. The little Velveteen rabbit lay there, hidden from sight under the bedclothes, afraid that someone might take him away, for he knew the boy needed him. It was a long, weary time. Uh-oh, our boy has gotten sick. But the rabbit is there to help him feel better. Presently the fever turned, and the boy got better, and he was able to sit up in bed and look at picture books while the little rabbit cuddled close at his side. And one day they let him get up and dress. It was a bright, sunny morning, and they had carried the boy out onto the balcony. The boy was going to the seaside tomorrow. Nana and the doctor had talked about it. All the while the little rabbit lay under the bedclothes and listened. The room was to be disinfected, and all the books and toys that the boy had played with in bed would be burned. Uh-oh. All the toys would be burned? Now, the boy had an illness that made him very sick, and they didn't have any other way to clean his toys at that time, because this is an old story. And so the way that they were going to make sure he didn't get the sickness again was to burn his toys and books. But does that mean the rabbit too? Just then, Nana caught sight of the rabbit. "How about his old bunny?" she asked. "That," said the doctor, "why, it's a mass of scarlet fever germs. Burn it all at once." So the little rabbit was put into the sack with the old picture books and a lot of rubbish and carried out to the end of the garden. The gardener promised to come early the next morning and burn the whole lot. That night the boy slept in a different bedroom with a splendid new bunny, all white, plush, with real glass eyes. Oh, so there he is. Now this boy in our story had a bad sickness called scarlet fever. And now today, our doctors know how to take care of it and would be able to take care of all those and disinfect everything. And we don't get things like scarlet fever as often like this. We're much more protected. Our doctors and nurses are so smart these days. But he had to get a new bunny to replace his old bunny. And while the boy dreamt of the seaside, the little rabbit lay among the old books and felt very lonely. By wriggling a bit, he was able to get his head through the opening of the sack and look out. He was shivering, for by this time his coat had worn so thin from hugging it that it was no longer any protection to him. Nearby he could see a thicket of raspberry canes, in whose shadow he had played with the boy on bygone mornings, and a great sadness came over him. Do you think he's alone out there in the garden, though? Who do you see? I see someone. Do you? Who's this? Wonder what is going to happen. I feel sad that our rabbit feels sad too, though. A tear, a real tear, trickled down his little shabby velvet nose and blink fell to the ground. And then, where the tear had fallen, a flower grew with slender green leaves and a blossom like a golden cup. And presently the blossom opened, and out stepped a fairy in a dress of pearl and dewdrops. She gathered the little rabbit up in her arms and kissed him on his velveteen nose that was all damp from crying. "Little rabbit, I am the nursery magic fairy," she said. "I take care of all the playthings that children have loved, and when they are worn out and the children don't need them anymore, then I come and take them away with me and turn them into real." And she held the little rabbit close in her arms and flew with him into the wood to open the glade between the tree trunks where the wild rabbits danced. Oh, do you see her? Oh my goodness. When they saw the fairy, they all stopped and stood round the ring to stare at her. "I've brought you a new playfellow," the fairy said. "You must be very kind to him and teach him all he needs to know, for he is going to live with you forever and ever." And she kissed the little rabbit again and put him down on the grass. "Run and play, little rabbit," she said. "Run and play." But the little rabbit sat quite still. He remembered about his hind legs, and he didn't want the other rabbits to see he didn't have any. And he did not know that the fairy had changed him altogether. But just then, something tickled his nose. And before he thought what he was doing, he lifted his hind toe to scratch it. And he found that he actually had hind legs, and gave one leap and grew so excited that when at last he did stop to look for the fairy, she had gone, and he was a real rabbit at last. Look! He didn't even know he had hind legs. He thought he was the same rabbit that he was, but she had changed him into one of the real wild rabbits that had lived in the woods. Autumn passed, and winter, and in the spring, when the days grew warm and sunny, the boy went out to play in the wood behind the house, and while he was playing, a rabbit crept out from the bracken and peeped at him. And about this little soft nose and his round black eyes, there was something familiar, so that the boy thought to himself, "Why, he looks just like my old bunny that was lost when I had scarlet fever." But he never knew that it really was his own bunny come back to look at the child who had helped him become real. Ah, what a happy ending of our story, The Velveteen Rabbit. I hope you enjoyed that story. And now it's time for our alligators. Ready? "See you later, alligator. See you later, alligator. Bye bye, butterfly. Bye bye, butterfly. Give a hug, ladybug. Give a hug, ladybug. Be sweet, parakeet. Be sweet, parakeet. Blow a kiss, jellyfish. Blow a kiss, jellyfish. See you soon, raccoon. See you soon, raccoon. Take care, polar bear. Take care, polar bear. Out the door, dinosaur. Out the door, dinosaur. So long, King Kong. So long, King Kong. Bye bye, said the fly. Bye bye, said the fly. And remember, preschool, Mrs. Ryan loves you, but God loves you even more. Have a fabulous God-filled day. Bye-bye.